All right. Good morning, accursed. It's day 4 of no power and no hot water here at the home office in Denholm. Jenni Byrne and Scott Reid are with me. How are you guys?
Doing great, David.
I'm great. I'm washed. I bathed in light. It's awesome. It's also Bob Dylan's 81st birthday. I've been saved by the blood of the Lamb. So it's a very big day here in Powertown, Dave.
Wow. Well, and Ottawa, I was reading yesterday from the city of Ottawa that they're saying this outage, this storm, this very small storm. My sister, who is without power herself, still in Ottawa, said it was like 20 minutes long, but it did more damage than the 1998 ice storm, which was very very horrific up there. Over 20 years ago.
Scott, I noticed you've got a Starbucks mug there. What name did you give yourself when you went to Starbucks this morning?
I call myself Chrome now. Yeah, because it sounds tough. It's metallic and I gleam.
For those of you who don't follow Scott every minute of the day, he tweeted a few days ago about how humiliating he finds his name, Scott, at the Starbucks when he gives it.
It feels kind of limp, It's like, what's your name? Scott. And then the next guy, as I joke, would saddle up and I'm Trailer Hitch, and I'm like, fuck, I can't compete. So Scott, is Scott here? And then there's like 7 54-year-old guys who go, yeah, that was my mom's call back in 1968. Yeah. Scott and Jennifer. Is there a Jennifer? 9 Jennifers put their hands up. Also the same age. Good. Okay. And we've got Mrs. Bond's grade 3 class reassembled.
Morning, Allison. Allison Smith from Queen's Park Today is here. Say hello.
Good morning. Yeah, speaking of original and unique names, there's mine.
Allison Smith. It's so funny to be seeing you after so long, girl.
What's going on? Give us a campaign update.
Sure, yeah. Maybe the biggest news is that Andrea Horwath is going to be back on the hustings today after her COVID isolation period is over. She's going to be talking about long-term care in Pickering and sitting down with the Star's editorial board. Premier Doug Ford, who I misspoke yesterday. Premier Doug Ford was the person that was going to Don Valley West. I said Del Duca, but I meant Doug Ford on yesterday's show. He is going to be making an announcement in Brampton and then campaigning around Scarborough in 3 different ridings, actually. Yesterday, he had put out his schedule, and then we learned in the morning that media weren't actually allowed to join or watch his schedule, even though it kind of looked the same as previous ones where there were media advisories. So it seems like his campaign's kind of closing the doors even a little bit more than usual, or a little bit more than previously on media avails. Yesterday, he did detour from his schedule to go up to Uxbridge with Peter Bethlen-Falvey, the PC's candidate there, to survey storm damage. And that came at the same time or just after Stephen Del Duca, who had told the media he was suspending his campaign. That was the word he used. What that really meant was that he went up to some regions in eastern Ontario to also survey storm damage and kind of talk to local residents there. But he kind of got made fun of a fair bit for that, for saying he was suspending his campaign when he was really also just holding a press conference. So Del Duca is back kind of in the Toronto GTA area. The suspended campaign is suspended no more. And yeah, that's basically it. He's going to be taking aim this morning at Doug Ford's failure to take on his biggest donors and make homes more affordable. So it sounds like he'll be going after, the Doug's Developer Buddies line, which we haven't seen a lot of. Andrea Horwath said it a couple times during the debates, but didn't so much elaborate on it, I would say. So if Del Duca gets specific today, that might make things a bit spicy.
And do the other leaders have any plans, do you know, to get to Eastern Ontario, Ford or Horwath?
Not that I've seen. I mean, we're in such the last leg of the campaign. I don't know if Ford, if Ford thinks he has some seat chances, he might go up there. I kind of thought it was notable. I was checking Peter Bethlen-Falvey's Twitter yesterday before we knew for sure if Doug was going to Uxbridge. We kind of heard that he was. And Peter hadn't posted any photos of like doing any of his like own on the ground surveying the damage type stuff, which I kind of just assumed he would. If you're in your riding, that's really is like Uxbridge had to declare a state of emergency. So, I mean, hard to say. It seems like the PCs don't want this to consume their campaign, but at the same time, if Ottawa, one of the largest cities in in the province, doesn't have power, it's a little bit hard to ignore.
Right. Cool. Well, thank you, Allison. Thanks for today.
Hey, Allison. Just before you go, can you say the finance minister's surname one more time for me?
Bethlyn Falvey.
Bethlyn. How's that go?
Bethlyn Falvey.
I have tripped over this. I wish she was like the minister of, filing cabinets or something. So but I can't get his name straight.
Bethlyn.
Well, given that you used to call Ford Doug, why don't you just call him Peter?
I got Pete, actually. P-Dog. Hey, man.
No, he likes Peter.
Yeah.
He likes
Not
Peter. Okay. Bethlyn.
Falvey.
Peter.
We've done this before. Bethlyn Falvey.
Bethlyn back rub. Okay, got it.
Rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah.
And Curse of Politics listeners can go to politicstoday.news and get a free trial of Queen's Park today for the last leg of the campaign.
Terrific newsletter. And thank you for joining us this morning, Allison. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Al. Bye.
Bye.
All right.
This podcast only happens at the intersection of our devoted audience and technology. In other words, Hurly-burlyites and accursed, thank you for being you. And internet, thank you for the hookup. I appreciate the goddamned hell out of you. I guess I thought I should throw down for the internet because clicking wherever we want to go is now just second nature for most of us. It's not that way for all Canadians, though. Many of us need help getting that connection. There's a digital divide in this country, and our presenting sponsor, TELUS, is working on a number of ways to bridge it. Their Internet for Good program is one of those ways. For low-income families who are struggling, for seniors living on fixed incomes, for youth aging out of care and people with disabilities. It offers reliable, high-speed internet access at the lowest cost possible. Opportunities never happen in a vacuum. Internet for Good means individuals and families can get the information they need and stay connected to loved ones and friends. Since the program began, over 31,000 households in BC, Alberta, and Quebec have come online with it. 11,500 were added just last year. And TELUS means to help 75,000 households access high-speed internet by 2025 with Internet for Good. Hurly-burlyites, they'll do it because they're not afraid to speak those commitments into existence and then measure objectives against actions. That's what makes them accountable. It's all part of TELUS's ESG commitments I've been talking about here these last few weeks. Environmental, social, and governance. How they put the well-being of their customers, communities, and the planet first. Read more about it in their sustainability and ESG report at telus.com/sustainability. There's a campaign going on. And I looked up at the Toronto Star today and I thought that, Ford campaign must be feeling pretty good about themselves again today. They've got a leaked Liberal memo that shows them with a big lead and concedes the victory to them, essentially. They've got the Star's own aggregator that shows them winning up on the Star site, and then they've got a wonderful column from Martin Regg-Con about the Premier. So they would be feeling pretty good. But you guys yesterday were cautioning them against overconfidence and about continuing to look hungry. Hasn't felt to me like they've approached the storm that way. Do you have any thoughts about that?
What do you mean?
Well, they haven't kind of been all over it. Like Ford, he got criticized for being absent on the weekend, and then yesterday did the thing in Uxbridge, but the government hasn't sort of taken this on and looked like they were all over it, and it's a pretty big deal in parts of the province right now.
Well, I think it's hard to say the government hasn't done it. The campaign hasn't done it. Doug went to Uxbridge with Peter, Beth, and Falvey yesterday to survey the damage that was in Uxbridge. It was not obviously a campaign event. He came in he came with The OPP security detail wasn't in the campaign bus. The campaign didn't push pictures out. And so I think there's always, and then as Allison said, Del Duca did get panned pretty heavily to say, I'm going to suspend my campaign. But before that, I'll do a 30-minute press conference, and then I'll push out a bunch of pictures of me harassing first responders as they try to get people's power up and survey the damage of what the wind for the storm caused. So this is always a very tough decision to make. You guys would have felt the same in government when there is a massive flood or a fire or some form of natural disaster that happens. You want to be seen, obviously, as being present and being there to survey the damage, to talk to the people affected. But you also don't want to seem that you're coming in the middle of people's hardships and also taking away massive resources in terms of what any form of cleanup effort or what have you can cause. So it really is a tough decision to make as to when that point is. But I don't think it's fair to say the government's probably not doing anything on this.
Sorry, that's right. That's right. That's right. That's what I meant. That's what I meant to say, Jenny.
Yeah.
Scott?
I think there is a risk for Ford. I think that. So I think the risk is that Ford's if they don't give fuller voice to people are hurting. Here's what our concerns are. Find time to get to Eastern Ontario and do something and be seen to be on the spot. You send the signal. You risk sending the signal. You're more concerned about not having your very nice, buttered to the edge, ticking like a Swiss watch campaign interrupted. So it sends a sense of priority. It's like, no, I got a good thing going here, and it's like, a little bit more than a week, and I just don't want to interrupt it for Mother Nature and all that. But the outages in Eastern Ontario are so significant that I think that he's got to bow to it in a little bit more of a significant way than yesterday's event. I think I agree with Jenny. I mean, I think, harassing first responders is maybe a pinch unfair, just a teen unfair. But I do think that the idea, it was ridiculous to use the phrase, I'm suspending my campaign, when you're not suspending your campaign. But I think Ford, if I was Ford's campaign, I'd do a little tuck-in adjustment. And it's not because they're going to lose a bunch of seats in Eastern Ontario. And it's not because it's likely that they'll be able to provincialize the opposition and be able to provincialize this issue and suddenly have everybody all around the province care about it and make a determination about Doug that, that they've failed at so far in this campaign. But I do think it's prudent for Ford to cover himself on this and demonstrate that, no, if people are hurting, that many people in that larger chunk of the province, I'm going to have something to say and prioritize it. Prioritize it certainly over my own campaign priority.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He has a bit of a vulnerable flank on Ottawa post-convoy. I don't think he was seen in Ottawa to take that city as seriously as he might have taken that occurrence if it had happened somewhere else. So
I assume Ottawa's more or less a write-off, anyway. Like, I'm not thinking about Ottawa proper. I don't think about it as a...
Lisa MacLeod?
It's Nepean, not quite Ottawa.
It's technically the city of Ottawa.
Is it?
Nepean is the city of Ottawa. The suburbs all around Nepean, or the city of Ottawa are the technical city of Ottawa.
Well, it'd be fun to make her sweat a little bit, but... I think that I don't know. You think there's going to actually switch seats, this issue? I don't really.
No, not at all.
Okay. Well, then that's probably enough time spent.
I don't mean to be so like we only analyze this through the lens of politics. We sound so crass, right? Oh, like all this devastation and people living without power and whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't mean to be glib about it. I come from Eastern Ontario, but I think he should make a nip and a tuck, but I don't really think this is going to paralyze his campaign and change seat totals. I don't.
If I was him, I'd get out there.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I'd get out there.
Yeah, that's all he has to do. That's all he has to do to nip this in the bud is to get there, I think. Jenny?
Yeah, well, and I'm sure that Doug has been on the phone with every mayor and reeve of every community in Eastern Ontario in terms of seeing what they want and what the resources are. So, I think that he went to Uxbridge. I think you'll probably see him make a statement, or the campaign make a statement on the storms in Ottawa. But I don't think that. I think the campaign has made a determination. They're not going to try to politicize, basically the city of Ottawa and Eastern Ontario. The devastation that some people found, as well as the people, David, like yourself, that remain to be out of power for the next 4 days, and in some cases, with no foreseeable future getting their power up and running. I know if I was probably sitting in that situation, the last thing I would give a shit about is whether the premier or any politician came to survey the damage.
Yeah, sure. I wouldn't want to politicize something that.
Yeah, it probably doesn't do much for the campaign. Like in terms of, it will probably diminish interest in the campaign in most parts of the affected areas.
Why? A kind of half serious question. Why didn't Ford run to the nearest microphone yesterday at 1 o'clock and go, "Thank you, Stephen Del Duca, sold. We are all going to suspend our campaigns and focus." Like, why wouldn't you go, "Okay, fine. If you want to freeze this moment in time until June 2nd or for any number of days, I'm happy to. We're laying down tools too. No campaign." Like, Ford's kind of like, "I got a comfortable lead. If you want to pull your ads and not tour, I'm happy with that. We can all go lift trees in Wolf Island." Like, what the hell? Why not?
But it was never serious. I'm suspending my campaign. So why even pretend? Why even pretend that it was?
I don't think that I'm suspending my campaigning thing has worked since it worked for Jimmy Carter against Ted Kennedy in the Democratic primary in 1980.
Well, it made McCain look like a fool against Obama, and ever since then, I think it's been a questionable tactic.
Yeah. I don't know how many of you have ever seen the port of Long Beach in Los Angeles. It's a massive industrial center, a sprawling intake valve of the American economy. Thousands of container ships disgorge their cargoes into the port every year. And in these days of chaotic supply chains, it can also be a choke point. That's what was happening a few months ago, as a shipload of vital blood collection supplies and COVID tests was steaming toward Long Beach from Asia. Hospitals across the U.S. needed the supplies, but the Los Angeles port was too backlogged to handle the shipment. So the White House contacted our sponsor, CN, which happens to operate the Port of Prince Rupert in British Columbia and has the most extensive North American network of any major railway. The container ship changed course and headed north. CN, meanwhile, arranged to prioritize the cargo. The railway effectively cleared a route from Rupert to Chicago, where CN's intermodal team was waiting to unload and expedite delivery to the hospitals. Long story short, the medical supplies arrived at their destinations several days ahead of schedule. It required perfect cooperation among government officials, transfer terminals, transportation teams, and railway planners. And that is what happened. Simply put, no other railway could have provided as effective a solution, which is why the White House called on CN. I've said it here before, we've made it this far into the pandemic with our economy largely intact, thanks to thousands of dedicated CN railroaders. Without them, there would be no supply chains, period. So the Toronto Star was a fun read this morning. First of all, the Conservatives, they get all this negative coverage about, Ford's peekaboo campaign. And then yesterday there was a bunch of stuff about how they don't release schedules and reporters were getting pissy about it. And then the Conservatives are fucking clever, eh? They give Martin Redcon this special access to go door knocking with Ford. And Ford just charmed the goddamn pants off him. And he writes this lovely piece about Ford and how great he is at the doors and how he's evolved and learned, a different man, and all this shit. So that was a clear win for them today. More interesting, perhaps, in the Toronto Star is the Rob Benzie story of the leaked memo in the Liberal campaign. Leaked.
How did they get it? Like, was there a break-in at the Watergate? How could they get this confidential document?
Well, I'm sure there's going to be police investigations. The Liberals will be very upset that this document has been released. And no, obviously, this is something that was intended. It's a direct response presumably to what the Conservatives and Corey Tonight did last week. Nick Kuvalis with the Nick Kuvalis memo.
Well, this is back in our day, though. It wouldn't have been like accidentally emailed. It would have been like, left on a specific table at the World Exchange with like a coffee stain on it. And
I don't know. I think that maybe the Toronto Star has a special inbox for liberal leaks. But in any event, this particular document says two things I think are noteworthy. First of all, it's got liberal numbers from their own poll, which it's a Dan Arnold memo. Dan obviously knows his stuff. Dan was the pollster for Prime Minister Trudeau, and now is back at Polara. Anyway, he wrote this memo, and they did their own live telephone survey, which I think are probably still the gold standard in survey research. And they had 41 Conservative, 27 Liberal, 21 NDP. So the first thing that I take from that is they are willing to put out there a terrible number about the Conservatives in order to sell a good number about the NDP. So they're prepared to say to the world, we're down 14 points and this thing is over. Ford's going to be the premier. Ford's going to win the most seats. But we are winning ahead of the NDP. And so you should congregate behind us to block a majority Ford government. So it is a pure overt strategic play initiative, but one that basically takes winning off the table. Interesting.
well, I guess I guess they have no choice. We've talked about earlier that both the Liberal and the NDP campaigns at some point were going to have to hit that fork in the road, so to speak, in terms of who their main opponent is. Is it going to be Doug, or is it going to be each other? And at least with the Liberals, we've seen over this weekend, if they sat in the long weekend and did what we talked about yesterday and before, in terms of going riding by riding by riding and figuring out what's possible and what's not. They made the determination that their opponent for the next 9 days or whatever it is are the NDP. So you kind of have no choice. So to Scott, your point, they're focusing on their downtown Toronto core seats and probably one-offs here and there where the NDP and the Liberals would duke it out in Southwest Ontario and the North.
Yeah, I'll say a couple things about it. One, I like the tactic. And people can poo-poo and go, oh, leak to liberal Toronto Star and all this shit. But look, as we've been saying, this is a campaign where it's extraordinarily difficult to penetrate. Really, there's been no momentum of any kind for anyone other than Doug. And even Doug's momentum has just been the success of being able to have a campaign that's drifting past people and they've locked in their views. So I like the tactic because it gives you a front page story today and it telegraphs to everybody else who's covering the campaign, this is going to be a battleground effort. Here's what we're about to do. Now watch. Chances are that's going to attract more eyeballs to, in the absence of anything else interesting, to cover what they're doing. And they've telegraphed it and framed it. Now they have to execute it, make it a success. But I like it as a tactic because, it's at least saying, hey, I'm not just going to lay here and take it. I'm going to get up off the canvas and throw one more punch at you. I like all that. And as you say, David, it will not work at all if it doesn't earn you some credibility up front. So it's a necessary thing that they begin with the numbers you cited, David. Otherwise, it doesn't get front page treatment. It just gets dismissed as a crock of shit and it doesn't have table stakes. So I think all that's interesting. I have one big beef, which is a terribly self-indulgent curse of politics, us three beef with it, which is that they are arriving, because I see it a little differently. I see what they're saying, Jenny, is, we can finish off the 416, but really the battleground for the next few days is going to be Ford and 905 and swing some seats and hold them to a minority. And we're going to go after affordability, which this set of voters seems to care about terribly, right? Fucking newsflash. And second, we're going to sort of do this whole friends of Doug, developers, insiders, all that. It isn't just, he's not for the people, he's for the people he knows and he takes cash from. And I know nobody cares, but just between the three of us, like, let's pretend no one's
It's
listening.
such a great day one.
We've been fucking saying that since before the campaign began. So that's just a little, and everybody hates that guy, puts his hand up at the end of the bar and says, sorry, I said that before the game started. I said you should put in a right-handed pitcher named Affordability and have Ford's friends as batting cleanup. But anyway, there we are. So overall as a tactic, hey man, if this isn't okay, what's better? What would be a better thing? Just to sail into the next few days and announce like you're going to suspend your campaign again? Like that seems to me just be a death rattle in someone's throat. So I kind of like it. It shows some game. It shows some life. It shows some kick.
Well, we'll see. I think one of my favorite lines was the self-gratuitous line about focus groups. The one they'd like to highlight that the focus groups from last Tuesday night after the debate truly appreciated Del Duca's honesty and explanation of the Liberal plan.
They probably thanked him.
I've written notes. I've written sentences like that in notes like this where you go, okay. I can't. In the interest of credibility, I have to say that we've gotten a bunch of stuff wrong, but I want to put in one little thing. But hey, that debate, I know a lot of you think that it was inconsequential, but there was something real. There was a little gem in there. It was our good explaining.
Solve the housing crisis by building more affordable homes, but not in my backyard. This is the mantra of a small but vocal group of Ontario residents, including municipal councillors and groups, that are more concerned about protecting the appearance of their neighborhoods than they are about ensuring all Ontarians have a fair shot at home ownership. Our original sponsor, the Ontario Real Estate Association, says NIMBYers, or not in my backyarders, are standing between the dream of home ownership and Ontario families. There are solutions that can help solve this crisis, but we need everybody on board. Outdated zoning laws only encourage NIMBY forces to fight the building of affordable homes and keep them out of growing neighborhoods. The result? More and more Ontarians have no shot at owning a home in the community they grew up in. Ontario needs to use the Planning Act to implement as-of-right zoning, beginning in urban municipalities, to create equality when it comes to home ownership and bringing down the cost of living. 40% of Ontarians believe that zoning restrictions in municipalities is the main reason why not enough homes are being built to sustain our current population. In 1 week, Ontarians go to the polls to elect the next provincial government. The housing affordability crisis needs to be at the top of the agenda when MPPs come back to Queen's Park, or else the dream of home ownership could disappear for an entire generation. You'll be hearing more from Maria about Ontario's housing affordability crisis and what can be done to fix it, because Aurea believes that reforming exclusionary zoning practices will have a big effect in ensuring we have a home for everyone. Read Aurea's plan at ahomeforeveryone.info. So, Jenny, they said there's 20 ridings in the 905 that are within 5 points, that the Liberals are within 5 points of the Conservatives on, and if they could just get some NDP vote, that's what the memo says, they could put them over the top and hold forward to a minority. What do you think of that math?
I think it's going to be, listen, I guess it's possible. I would have a hard time finding them based on any of the other numbers, but I guess anything is possible. At this point, I'm assuming all parties at some point are doing really targeted riding by riding polls, because we're getting to the point where the regional polls, at least internally to make decisions, aren't going to mean as much. But I think they also have a problem in terms of affordability, because everything they're talking about is actually in terms of this is basically taking Doug's plan. So you've got him taking the gas tax in terms of affordability for drivers, yet talking about climate change yesterday. So which leaves a huge opening in terms of the Liberal support of carbon tax. So I think it's going to be very hard to take the Liberals on an affordability when you really have no policies that actually make life more affordable. And Scott, to your point, that they're doing it so late in the game that I'm just not sure it's going to what it's going to work. Like if you look at the 905 ridings, the NDP and the Liberals were completely wrong in terms of judging things like roads and the Highway 413 that we've seen steadily increase support for the construction of that highway, or I think it was in the Abacus poll that said the construction of any roads. And so I think there's just been a miscalculation in terms of where these campaigns were coming from in terms of reaching out to those 905 voters. And I just am not sure that you can do it in 9 days. And let's be honest, we're like 4 days in on advanced polls. So in a lot of these places, the Conservatives are very, very focused on GOTV. They always have been, both the provincial and federal parties, and they're very focused on advanced polls.
I think one of the interesting things about this is, I think that's a fair point. And today, I think, though, based on the way they're telegraphing their event, the Liberals, it sounds like they're going to introduce, maybe around the issue of housing, so that takes you into development, takes you into 905, the cozy circle of Ford insiders, and try to spin that story. And the same question prevails, is it too late to get that narrative landed with the media, with people, have it affect people's thinking and voting? But nevertheless, I think we're going to get that. So that'll be a new nugget. So that will be, depending on how sharply they deliver it, that will be catnip to media. So I think it's likely that it will get reported. The one small thing I would say to the campaign is make sure you finish the sentence. And by that, I mean this. Often campaigns will say, oh, well, my opponent has got a cozy circle of insiders and this is what they're up to. And then they present it as though it's a gasping scandal that people will and people don't care. Because people think all politicians are shit and everybody's out for themselves. So you have to complete and finish the sentence by saying, and this is why it screws you. This is why it affects you. Because nobody really cares if maybe some developer has the right lobbyist and got something that he wanted. They only care if they can then do the math and they go, and that fucked me. Right. And so they've got to do that piece. So we'll see. But look, the whole premise of the memo, to be honest, if you take it at face value, is it's a long ball game. We got to throw downfield and aim for the corners.
Why was this the opportune time to launch the strategic voting play? It's a little early by normal standards. Is it because Horwath is down and maybe the NDP campaign looks a little bit vulnerable? I mean, it's an odd time. In one sense, it's not a perfect time because the polls have actually been tightening between the Liberals and the NDP over the course of this week. On the other hand, we know from all the polling that most Ontarians believe the Liberals can win and the NDP cannot win, or that the Liberals are more likely to win than the NDP, however you ask that question. So that strategic vote nugget is already in people's heads. But it's an early time in the campaign to make this play.
Well, there's a lot more advanced poll days this campaign than there were last.
That's true. Very good point.
Very good. See?
Very good.
Somebody who's got some familiarity with the ground war, unlike David and I. Sitting in rooms.
So from a practical point of view, people are voting all week. So I think that they probably looked at that and said that we can't continue to bleed or let this go for another 5 days that people are voting in the advanced polls.
Can I ask something heretical though on that whole thing? I know the memo says that, and I know it seems intuitive that you need that consolidation, and but is it the truth? Unless the polling has changed more, and I guess we'll get new data from Greg soon. But isn't the truth that the Liberals need the NDP to be pretty strong in most places, other than the places they're trying to break through? So obviously they want them to wither in 416. They'd like them to vanish in 905 and have that strategic vote dynamic going there. But in the rest of the province, they need if you do the math, you need the NDP to be at 24%, 25%. Otherwise, they're not competitive in the North and Southwestern Ontario. And you need, they can't just fall over and have those seats become pickups for the PCs, right? The Liberals need those. That's also part of your play for a minority. So it's incredible. The strategic vote, the kind of where you want the NDP to be weak and where you don't.
I don't think they can slice it and dice it like that.
That's my point.
They're focused only on their own seat count right now, and the transfer is so efficient. When Liberals break away from the Liberal Party, they break 2-1 to the NDP over the PCs. When New Democrats break from the NDP, they go 9-1 Liberal over Conservative. Right, so it's almost just a direct transfer when you can move them like that. So it can move things in a hurry. All right, who's got a blessing or a curse today?
Well, I'll just do a quick curse. I guess it's a curse to the media. Yesterday, I know we've heard the media complain about access to Doug and the campaign. And as you said, David, they did the campaign ride along with the Star earlier this week and got very good coverage on this. But yesterday in Uxbridge, when Doug and Peter were touring the storm, in Uxbridge, there was a reporter from Global that showed up to ask questions, and his two questions were, why aren't you advertising where there's media avails? Why can't we ask you questions? And also some random question about a letter or flyer that the federal or the provincial party put out like over 6 months ago. So if the media wonder why,
you're referring, of course, to the fake invoice fundraiser.
Yes, something that the party put out. I vaguely remember it. I think it was in the fall. So if you wonder why there's no outcry of support for you among people, that you're not getting access to Doug or any other leader that decides not to have open-ended press conferences every day, it's because when you have the opportunity to ask a question, you literally ask questions that nobody gives a flying fuck about.
Ha! This is great. I'm so glad you went first, Jenny, because I also have a blessing curse today, and mine is a blessing to Sean O'Shea. I literally had this picked up. Now, Sean O'Shea, the reporter in question from Global, is notoriously aggressive and pugnacious and gets in your face, and he's one of those guys that Global gets action and, all that kind of stuff. And guys like that, when I was running comms for leaders and prime ministers and premiers, they would drive me to drink, that kind of guy, that kind of style. But I have to say, I was going to give my blessing as a shout out to Sean O'Shea, because in a campaign where no one has really challenged Ford on this question of itineraries, and I've been talking about it, and I know it's loser talk for his opponents to say, oh, why aren't you doing more media and stuff? But at least Sean O'Shea said, fuck this noise, kicked the door down, started yelling and screaming, knocking things down, smashing vases. Good for him. I like to see it. And you don't get to pick as a campaign what questions you get asked. So you may not like a question about the fucking memo, but that's not your job. And you don't get to tell the media who and what they ask about. So I say blessing to Sean O'Shea, blessing for storming the Bastille and giving it away. I know it won't matter a damn, but good on you.
Well, I guess, Scott, this is where you and I, what I'm saying is, I think it was a waste for him to ask a question on a 6-month-old memo and whether he's allowed to take a question. So good for him for being able to storm the barricades and get in Ford's face. But if you're going to do that, why not ask something that's actually relevant?
He might have a follow-up story today that proves that memo is the key to Doug Ford and the Conservatives melting like a witch at the end of the Wizard of Oz. You have no idea. This thing could be the absolute page turner.
How am I going to keep the two of you off each other in that tomorrow night when we're live?
Lordy.
In the same room. It's going to be fisticuffs. Speaking of fisticuffs, my blessing is to the Liberal campaign, Stephen Del Duca, today. I'm taking what you say in that memo, and I'm believing that you are going to say something about Doug Ford today that he will still have to be talking about tomorrow. That's the objective.
Yes.
Make him still be talking tomorrow about what you said today. So go out, get him. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thanks all you accursed for listening. I want to thank our presenting sponsor, TELUS, and our sponsors, OREA, the Ontario Real Estate Association, and CN. I'd like to thank Allison Smith from Queen's Park today for being here. Jenny, Scott, have good days.
David, get a shower before you hit town tomorrow, okay? That's all we ask.
No, seriously. I'm showing up at the Board of Trade not having showered for 5 days. This is going to be the circumstance.
Super. Great. All right. Well, I'll be trading chairs with someone else then, but
I will have clean underwear, but that's all I can guarantee.
We can be on one side of the stage. David.
Way down the end of the Group W bench.
All right, guys. See you tomorrow night at the Board of Trade.